Today in this video I am going to talk about what are the 5 resume mistakes which you should avoid so that it does not cost you your next job opportunity. Hi everyone, my name is Mukeshkala. I am a 4 times UiPath most valuable professional, certified solution architect and an advanced RPA developer. And recently I have also got the LinkedIn top voice. I have posted my LinkedIn details on the slide. So feel free to connect me on the LinkedIn and I would be happy to be part of your network. As many of you are already aware that I conduct mock interview on my channel, and for the mock interview I receive a lot of resume from the candidates. So during the mock interview I go to the resume and at the end I provide them the feedback on the resume as well. And over a period of time what I have realized is that there are some common mistake, at least 5 or 6 of them, which most of the people are doing into their resume. So in case if you are somebody who is looking for a job, or if you are someone who has to send a resume for a recruitment, make sure that you watch these videos and make sure that you are not doing these mistakes in your resume. I am not an experienced hiring consultant or I am not an HR, but these are something which is based on my experience. If there is something which I have missed, or if there is something which you want to add from your experience, please feel free to add it on the comments and I would be happy to amplify your knowledge for the wider audience, right? Lastly, in case you are coming to the channel for the first time and you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel to get the next videos in the same playlist. Having said that, let's get started. The first mistake which I want to talk about is adding the stuff or adding the skills in the resume which you are not able to answer during the interview. So for example, I have a resume and I am going for an interview, and I say that, hey, I have created 3 projects in document understanding, or let's say I am an expert in AI center. I am very good at integration service, right? Looking at the resume, the interviewer feels that, okay, yes, this is a good candidate. Now let me ask him a questions based on document understanding. And he asks you a basic question that give me the stages of document understanding, and you are not able to answer the basic question, then you lose the credibility in the interview. The interviewer thinks that, hey, this candidate is not knowing the basics. That means that he have not done anything which is mentioned in the resume, right? So these are the questions which the interviewer is going to ask you based on what you have mentioned in the resume, right? Idea here is add only the things or add only the skills in the resume or the project which you are very comfortable talking of, and in case the interviewer is asking you the questions, you can answer that. Now by this I do not mean that you should not add the additional skills. So for example, if I am an RPA developer and I know the basics of AI center, or I know the basics of integration service, I know the basics of process mining, right? So I would like to add it as it is, right? So I would like to add it like that I have knowledge of all these technologies, or I have done the learnings, I have done the POC. I would not say that I am an expert in these technologies, right? So if I am knowing the basics, I'll just add I know the basics, right? And whenever you say that you know the basics, make sure that you know the basics, right? So the first mistake which I see a lot of people is that they add things in the resume which they are not able to answer to the interviewer, creating a negative impression during the interview, and the interviewer lose a trust on the candidate, right? So avoid using things in the resume which you cannot answer the interviewer. The second mistake which I see is that people creating lengthy resume by putting repeated content. What I mean by that is, many time I see people putting projects in the resume, project 1, project 2, project 3, project 4, project 5, and when I go and internally read them, the content of the project is exactly the same, and they are just changing some words. So here they say that, hey, I have used a bank application. In the second project you just change the bank with insurance, and it is exactly the same project, same details, by just changing the words. The second thing which I have noticed is that just to increase the length of the resume, people putting the things in different ways. So for example, the first line says, I have experience in web automation with RPA. I have experience in web automation in UiPath. Fair enough, right? The fourth line says experience in web automation. The fifth line says experience in creating and automating the web application. The fifth line, or after 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, again the same thing in a different ways, right? Automated web application using UiPath. So basically you have written the same thing 4 times. Now what is the impact of that? So first of all, it does not appear to be so professional, and you have to bear in mind that the person who is sitting on the other side, he is an expert in that area. So by changing the words, you are actually wasting the time of the interviewer, right? The interviewer can easily sense that, okay, this is just a repeated stuff which you have mentioned. Now what is the trick and what is the idea? So the whole idea is, if you are good at something, you have mentioned it, you have highlighted it, right? Do not just keep on repeating the same thing again and again. And when it comes to adding the details in the project, right, make sure that you add the details which is relevant to the project, and it is not a copy of the other project, right? So it's not about that how lengthy is your resume. If your resume is, let's say, 5 pages, 6 pages, so it's going to create a good impression, right? If I just repeat the same thing again and again, and I just keep on increasing the number of the projects, it's not going to help, right? So keep your resume crisp, right? Do not try to make it lengthy. If you already have that skill, if your resume have that power, you have done a lot of work, feel free to add it, right? But do not just copy paste the stuff in your resume to make it lengthy, right? It's not going to help, right? So that was the second mistake. The third mistake which I see in the resume again is copy pasting the data from other resume, or from the resume of your client or your friend or any of your colleagues, right? So whenever we see the resume, right, so it has a format. Now when you copy paste the data, right, a lot of time I see that the project is there, you have written a very good project which is available in your CV, but when I ask question to the interviewer based on the project which they have added, simply like, how do you run this process, who is the business, what is the frequency, right, all the basic questions on the project which they have added, and they are not able to answer. So copy pasting projects in the resume or any other technical skill and not able to answer creates a very negative impression on the interview. In case you are adding projects to the resume, you should be fully aware of what that automation is all about. What is the business statement? What is the problem? How do I schedule it? How do I run it? And when you say that, hey, I have worked on 10 different projects, I have deployed everything on production, then you are expected to know in and out of the project, right? When I talk about this copying and pasting, right, that brings to the fourth point also, which is like the formatting of the resume, right? A lot of time what I see is people just copy paste the data from their colleague's resume or their friend's resume, and when I open the resume, I see a font mismatch, right? On the top it is different, on the bottom it is different, and then there is a section which look abruptly odd on the resume, right? Which brings me to the next point, which is the formatting. So the resume should be consistent, the look and the feel, the layout, the colors you choose, the bullets you used, right? That should be proper. It should not like that the first section is on a different font, the second one is a different form, it's not properly aligned, or you have just written a lot of text without any context, right? So these are the two mistakes, mistakes number 3 and the 4 which people usually do. And when we talk about font and formatting, right, there is one common thing which a lot of people do is spelling mistake, right? Just imagine you are going for a UiPath developer interview and you do not know how do you write UiPath. Somebody write UI space path, right? So UiPath, you are saying that, hey, I have been working on 3 years, 4 years, and you do not know that UiPath is a single word, right? Or you have done a mistake in the word automation. You have put something on the heading like professional summary, and the spelling of summary is wrong, right? So just think what impression you are creating when an interviewer sees a resume which is having spelling mistakes, which is having something which is very odd, or maybe you have used some logos which are very old, right? So I see resumes of UiPath where they are still using the very old logo of UiPath. That clearly means that they are not updated, right? So resume is the first impression which the interviewer gets, right? Make sure that your make sure that your resume is correct, and you have put only the stuff, again I'm repeating the same thing, you have put only the stuff which you are aware of. If you are even copy pasting, make sure that it aligns to your resume font, formats and all, right? So do a spell check, make sure the format is consistent, and whenever you are sending the resume, make sure you send it as a PDF, because when you send it as a Word file, sometimes the spaces go here and there, you put a lot of images that move here and there, right? So sending in PDF is a good idea, because the PDF at least take cares of the format and it not get misaligned, right? When I'm talking about the sending, this immediately brings me to one of the other mistake which people usually do, that was not in the plan, but let me tell you. Whenever you are sending the resume to anybody, right, think it, right? So you are an recruiter or you are an hiring manager and you are receiving a lot of resumes, right? And suddenly you receive a resume which is having no subject, no context, just an attachment. What are you going to do with that, right? Do you really think that the interviewer is going to open your resume, see which position you are applying for, where you have applied, what is your experience, right? So email etiquettes, right? When you are sending the resume, just do not just directly attach and send it to anybody, right? A lot of time I have seen that when I ask people for references, I directly get resume in my mailbox without any context. So a basic idea would be, specify in the subject, right, which post you are applying for. Maybe applying for the RPA developer, 2 to 3 years experience, this is the UiPath profile, and if possible just add a small summary of your profile so that it is easy for the recruiter, right? Just think it like that. If you are a hiring manager and you are receiving 100 of the resume, right, what would you like to see in an email? Or in other words, if somebody has just sent you a resume into the email with no subject, no context, no body, what you are going to do? On the second hand, I see a lot of people applying for the job and forget about the attachment. Then I have to write them back and saying that, hey, I have found your email, but I do not see the resume, right? So avoid using these email mistakes as well, right? So these were some of the mistakes which were in related to the resume, sending of the resume, and I hope you found it insightful. And if you are doing any of this, stop doing that. Now I am going to share you some of the things which is very generic, most of you might be already knowing, but if some of you are already doing that, please avoid doing it, right? So the first thing is having a unprofessional email ID, right? So yes, we all know that when we were in the college, right, we create a lot of funky email ID, cool dude 1234, right, dragon ball capture, pokemon capture, right, or any of the funky email IDs we create, right? Now when we go for an interview, the email ID is something which is always at the top, right? So recently I got a resume where the candidate email ID was something like ghostwriter123 and some number @gmail.com, right? It is an email ID, it's okay, right? But when we are applying for a job, you have to be bit more professional, right? So make sure you have an email ID which is more professional, right? When we talk about the resume, right, so there is something which is email ID. The next thing is something which is called phone numbers, your contact information. So make sure that your phone numbers, contact informations are exactly intact and exactly correct, right? So I had this one case where I was trying to dial a number from the CV and I was not able to reach the candidate because the mobile number was not available. He might have changed the mobile number, but he forgot to update the CV, right? And as a opportunity, right, it might have been a wonderful opportunity for him, right? You never know. So don't miss opportunity just because of not having a proper contact information on the resume. Okay. The next thing which I see usually is the summary and the objective, right? So summary and objective is something which is at the top of the resume. That should not be something like which you have just copied, right? As we have been already talking, it should specifically mention about your current experience, about your current position, right? In case you are a fresher, your objective would be different. In case you are a experienced developer, 3 or 4 years developer, your objective would be different. And in case you are at a manager level, your objective would be different, right? So I cannot just copy the objective from my fresher resume, put it in my experience resume and then send it, right? So objective is something why you are looking for a change or what exactly you are looking for, right? So make sure that your objective, your headline overview is in what you are actually looking for and it not just a generic thing. One other thing is, whenever you are creating the resumes, right, make sure that you actually put the information in a chronological order, which means that your latest job information is at the top. So for example, I started to work and let's say close to 2014, right? And now if I am creating the resume, I should not start with my first company 2014, then I went to the Deloitte, then I went to Accenture and so on and so forth, right? I should put what is my latest company at the top, what is my latest experience and all of that in that order, right? So in case you are a fresher or something, right, put it in the other way around, which is your latest degree, rather than putting the 10th, 12th and that thing, right? So that order is important, because when you are applying for this job, when you are applying for this position, right, people are interested to see what you have done in the more recent, right? So just assume, right, a person having 10 experience, 10 companies and putting it into the first company, second company, like that, right? Rather than it should be 10, 9, 8, 7, like that, right? The order of information is important in the resume. When we talk about the resume, a lot of the people have gaps in the education, they have gaps in the employment. Having a gap in the career is not at all a bad thing, right? But when you are sending a resume, right, you might have a valid reason for the gap. But let's say there is a recruiter who is reviewing the resume, he says that okay, this candidate worked till 2018 and then there is a gap of 6 years, right? And then you have not mentioned that what you have done in the gap, right? You might have a very valid reason for justifying the gap, but since you have not mentioned in the resume, the recruiter is not knowing you, how would anybody know that, right? They must just see the gap and say that hey, there is a huge gap in the employment, so let's not consider, right? Let's consider someone who is more regular. And chances are there that you might be a very good candidate fitting for the role and you have a justification for the gap, right? So in case you have gap, in case you have anything which you want to tell the interviewer, right, don't keep it with you, right? So in case you have gap, just justify that why there is a gap into the experience, right? You might not want to explain it, but just put it as a high level into the resume, right? Okay, so that is all for this video, where I wanted to cover the common mistakes which I see in the resume for any of the job interview. I hope you found this video insightful. If there is anything which I may have missed, feel free to write in the comments and I would be happy to amplify your comments to the rest of the audience, right? I would really appreciate your feedback on this content and let me know what do you feel about such content and if you would like to see more of such content, right? So with that, I would like to wrap this video here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do subscribe to the channel and see you in the next video.